The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar hosted by PSIA. My name is Alex, and I'll be moderating today. One housekeeping item I'd like to go over real quick. Due to the large number of people on the line, you'll notice that you're all muted, but if you do have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box, and we'll do our best to get to all of them at the end of this webinar. If we do run out of time for questions, we'll be sure to have the proper individual follow-up. And with that, I'll pass things directly over to David Bunzel.
Thank you, Alex. I also wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We have a very interesting topic with high relevance to people in both the physical and logical security industry, and that's dynamic identity management. And first, let me provide a little bit of historical perspective on the PSIA and some of our activities. Next slide. So the PSIA was founded in 2008. And in 2008, we actually had a meeting with about 25 companies. And Alex, you can go to the next slide. I think we have this. We basically looked at the physical security industry and realized that there was need for standards and specifications now that the industry was going more towards IP. We decided that our initial focus was to support physical security in ways to ease integration. We recognized that there was a lot of software activity that was going on in integrations, and we felt that there was an opportunity through standards to reduce software coding and reduce the redundant coding that was going on. We also saw that some of the standards might be able to enhance functionality through using common terminology and diction in the standards. Next slide. Fast forward to 2005. During that period, we developed a number of different standards supporting video, analytics, and data storage, and we found that there was the need to get involved with area control. We initially defined area control as both access and intrusion. And more specifically, over the last couple of years, we've been very active in supporting a couple different subsegments of access control with profiles and specifications, and that includes the enterprise access control. We've been working actively on intelligent locking devices, PLAI, which is our Physical Logical Access Interoperability specification, and power management. Intrusion has gotten some attention, but probably not as much as that area control. Next slide. We have a broad membership reflecting a number of different areas of the security industry. We have very dedicated and active participation from some of the leaders, especially in the PACS, Physical Access Control System market, and they have been working on PLAI as well as other activities with access control. So you can see some of our membership here. Next slide. So this brings us to the topic for today, which is dynamic credential management. We were at a meeting a couple of years ago, and our next speaker very eloquently spoke about the need for bridging physical and logical security systems, recognizing that one of the areas that really the industry needed some support on was a more robust way to manage credentials. We recognized that there were many companies in the industry that were facing situations where either through acquisition or otherwise they ended up with disparate or different PACS systems, and the options that they had to integrate them were complicated and cumbersome. We also saw that there was a need for dynamic invoking and revoking of privileges for many of the customers out in the market, enterprise customers. They were dealing with more and more contract workers or people who were going between different facilities where different levels of privileges were needed, and the ability to change those dynamically, seamlessly, and across all of the systems was very important. And so we saw that there was an opportunity to support that. And finally, normalizing data, trying to figure out how you could have data in a common format that it could be easily used across different systems and to extend the services. based on that, I'd like to introduce Mohammed Selmani, who is not only the chairman of the PSIA, but he was the architect of PLAI and some of the activities and things that we're going to be discussing today. Mohammed?
Thank you, Dave, and good afternoon or good day to everybody participating. I'm delighted to see a vast number of registration and attendees on this webinar and so many companies participating. So when we started dialoguing with our end customers, being the end customers being enterprises and integrators, what we heard loud and clear from them, from the perspective of what we need to provide as a standardization body or a specification body, was the following. Number one, as it stands for a standards body and a specification body, customers wanted us to provide a non-proprietary open interface with large emphasis on that. Also, our customers wanted an easy way to connect logical and physical identity management system. And by that I mean the workflow of bringing somebody on board on the logical side, providing them an email address, for example, on the IT side and so forth, needed to flow seamlessly and painlessly and without any friction into the access control side of the house as well, without having to create two data entry points. And inversely, if you remove the person from the logical side, the access from the physical side needed to be removed. So tightly coupled in identity management between the two systems. What we also heard from our customers was an easy way to manage the scope of physical access control based on a person's function or role in the organization or their home base, which building, which city they're in, which region they're in. If that's defined in the logical side, then it would flow through the physical side and would allow automatic access based on where their home base is or what their region is and so forth. Also, the customers emphasized the upcoming and the wave of the future integration with mobile credential management systems in a non-preferential way, in a non-proprietary way, where there's an open interface that can exchange and allocate mobile credentials. So it would enable Bluetooth or NFC-enabled phones to work with the locks that are now becoming very much available in the industry to seamlessly open the doors through their credential assignment. And finally, the emphasis from our customers was that it has to be cloud connectable, IoT ready, and in essence provide real-time location information for easy integration with other systems that use and consume location-based information, for example, hoteling or energy management systems. So with that, I would like to introduce Mike Faddis from Microsoft, who will also give us a perspective from a customer. Mike?
Thanks, Mohammed. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone today, really from that end user perspective. So I wanted to share why Microsoft Global Security is adopting PLAI and why we're working with PSIA and moving forward on it. So Microsoft and Global Security in particular, led by my general manager, Mike Howard, have really spent a lot of time investing in industry relations and working with different groups, particularly those that help standards and interoperability efforts for security, which is a big deal from an end user perspective. So we span across a lot of groups and try to help the industry better understand that end user perspective and hopefully get some open and interoperable technologies that help manage risk at the same time. And today there's more emphasis than ever being placed on providing physical and logical security identities, which are really closely related or tied in. And from our perspective, Microsoft recognized more than a decade ago that we could tie our access control and our logical together. We've had it on the same card for since 2003, and really it's been fantastic from the perspective within Microsoft, where the logical and physical are really tied in and we work very closely together, even though we have very different jobs. So integrating that technology is almost entirely on IT platforms, though, carries its own challenges, and so we've continually looked for something to help us move in a direction that really brings them together, especially when we have a tech-savvy group like we do at Microsoft, and delivering on that requirement's challenging when you have 200,000 employees and over 700 locations globally. So Global Security joined the PSIA in August of 2013 to really bring that end user perspective and discuss the challenges, help develop some solutions if appropriate, and really help spark innovation among manufacturers and the solution providers. And PSIA has been a great opportunity to do that. And so, and during the discussions around PLAI, and Mohammed just talked a little bit about how that came about and with his ideas and thought, we ended up integrating Nokia's hardware and phone division into Microsoft at the same time. And so that really forced us to go, okay, we need to take a look at how to take these disparate systems and make them work more efficiently and in a better way. So all of a sudden the PLAI functionality became a reality to me that we needed to incorporate it in some way, shape, or form. So we looked at it closely and really found that it was an excellent midterm solution for a couple of reasons. It allows us to really get some cost benefit from it, more tightly integrated security solution. And PLAI really adds more functionality, particularly the ability to have the entire enterprise identities derived from a single trusted identity source. So as an end user and a participant in the PSIA, it's been a fantastic opportunity, and PLAI is really a technology that its time is here and very much needed from an end user perspective. So you're going to hear more about it here and really discussing it more deeply, but I encourage anyone who's listening today to check out the PSIA and understand what PLAI is and see where it could fit in your organization, especially from an end user perspective. So thanks very much for the time today, and I'm happy to talk about this in the future too if there's any questions. Dave, back to you.
Great, thank you, Mike. And now I'd like to introduce Darren Bane. Darren is the work group chair of PLAI. He's been very involved in converged systems between physical and logical, and I think he can provide some great perspective on PLAI and what it is and how it might be able to support some of the needs in the various groups that are on this call. Darren?
Thanks, Dave. You used a beautiful intro there, the word converged. It was back in about the same time as Mike was just talking about, 2003, that the word convergence was a big buzzword in the industry about bringing logical and physical access together. And there was a lot of companies who delved into trying to make that happen, and obviously it's a fairly large task, and there was a lot of money spent, and there wasn't a lot of progress in a lot of areas to achieve that. And as Mike just said, you know, when they brought on Nokia and they had to bring in all of those people, they really needed to look around and find a way that they could bring the logical and physical identities together in a standards-based approach. And that was really, or that really is what PLAI is about. And so from my perspective, back in 2003, reading all about and being involved with a lot of the security convergence, it's a fantastic outcome that there is an approach that is PLAI that actually manifests into the reality of actually making that happen. And it's, you know, it has happened for customers out there to use this standards-based approach to bring those logical and physical identities together and all of the other attributes associated with that. Next slide, Alex, please. So really just working back against the wish list that Mohammed presented before, you can see very much the same set of outcomes. is what's actually been achieved within the PLAI specification that's available for you guys to become involved with and to have your vendors, or depending on who you are, actually become compliant with. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a sec. So just going through this diagram here that really captures the essence of what PLAI is. On the left-hand side of your logical IT systems, Active Directory would be a classic example of that. And on the right-hand side is your physical access control systems. So if you start at the bottom, if looking at the diagram, if you have an identity that exists in the Active Directory system, that's a logical identity, or it might be in an HR system or something like that. All of those identities need to generally have physical access, and that's a good example with the Nokia integration. That's exactly what had to occur, and there's a lot of people had to come across and become part of the Microsoft Global Physical Security Access. So that identity was able to flow down, as Mohammed indicated. The ability to take a role and translate that into location or groups of access or functional role access, so based upon the fact that you're a supervisor of plants around the world or within a region or whatever, to take that functional role and actually turn it into real access. And that helps obviously automate a lot of the, what would be today, and still 90% of organizations, a lot of the manual tasks of allocating access to people. Stepping that up another level was really the ability to take a mobile credential as they came through and actually provision that out to the device to say, hey, here's some physical access that can be granted through this mobile credential, so that instead of having a badge when someone turns up at a reader at a location they've just flown to around the world within their organization, they're able to gain access to that area using that mobile device. And you'll notice that all of those arrows to that point are really flowing from the logical system as the source of truth to the physical access control systems. And I should say that that can be systems. Because as was indicated by Dave at the very beginning, there are organizations that have multiple different physical access control systems. It's not mandatory that that's the case, but that's certainly an area where PLAI can greatly assist, that when an identity or a role or something actually is provisioned into a physical access control system from the logical system, it can then flow back out to the other physical access control systems. So if you have 2 or 5 in your organization, when Darren's identity is created in the first one and then a credential is granted, so I'm given a badge in that system, where necessary, that can then flow out to the other physical access control systems, so that I, as a person within the organization traveling to various locations, can actually ensure that I have the access that I need when I get there. The other thing above that as well is a bidirectional arrow at the very top, the dynamic attribute, and that's really about things like location. So it says, okay, I've just badged into the Vladivostok location. That means that I can now be, using certain devices within that location. So, but equally, that arrow can flow the other way. I've just logged into, somewhere in China, so therefore I can now have physical access potentially turned on or granted or validated or not showing up as an alarm somewhere or whatever. So there's all of those type of scenarios that are now have a solution available, but as greatly pointed out, this is a standards-based approach. This is not just an idea and a solution that is something that needs to be built by every single organization. There is actually a specification and standard approach to doing this within PLAI. Next slide, Alex. Thanks. So I spoke about sort of the 4 major tenets. This diagram really just gives you a view of the state of the PLAI system at the moment, and what some of the vendors that are involved and have already created compliant PLAI compliance within their actual products. You can see them across the bottom there. Some of the major physical security vendors in the world, and there's others that are getting involved. Equally, if we start at the top of that diagram, you have your Microsoft Active Directory, your logical system. Thanks, Alex, great. and that then flows down as an identity. It flows through a PLAI agent, okay, which is not something that has to be from anywhere specific. PLAI agents can be built by different vendors as required. There are some available for testing with and so forth. And you can see that once it hits the PLAI agent, that identity then flows out to the various physical access control systems, and they are bidirectional arrows. So if Darren flows down and flows into the Linnell system, well, that arrow can fly back up to the PLAI agent and push my credential down into Tycho, Gallagher, Stanley, MyCastle, whatever. All of those things are all available, and equally, on the left-hand side of the diagram, you can see that it flows out to the credential management system as well, so your mobile credential management. So that covers all of those bases within PLAI, and that's how it all fits together. Next slide. So really, one of the major things coming on board within PLAI and was really just making it a lot easier for people to become involved. There's been a lot of work, obviously the initial foundation of the idea, customers coming on board and supporting the whole process, and a lot of the specification being built, but really then, to bring people on board and get people more involved, it needs to be more accessible, and that's what has a lot of work's gone into that. So if you go to the website and have a look, you'll see that there is a link to the PLAI section of the PSIA within that, and it's a fairly simple thing to get to. It never used to be, but it is now. Next point. One of the major things that we put in there, we've done webinars and seminars and everything else, and we get asked a lot of questions during and after those shows. And we've collated a lot of those questions, but we've also, within our own discussions, have formulated a number of questions that we know are very relevant. We put a document together, and that's available on the website, of frequently asked questions. So there's quite a few pages in there of various questions that, depending on whether you're a vendor or a consultant, a customer, where you lie in the architecture, those questions are sitting there with our answers associated with them, and we're happy, obviously, to continue building on that as needed. One of the other things it talks about is who's PLAI compliant. Now, obviously, if you're a customer, you want to know, okay, well, are my vendors compliant with PLAI? And that's a place where you can find that out as a starting point to, who is PLAI compliant. But equally, if you want to get involved in a PLAI architecture and have this kind of solution available within your organization, building a really sustainable approach to going forward. That's one of the big things about IT, which is the world that I come from, is that when you build all these integrations and systems and everything else, it's fantastic on the go-live party, but you know what? You've actually got to sustain this going forward and turn it into the value that the ROI showed at the beginning of the project that proved why the budget should spend the money it should. So it's important to know who's PLAI compliant and vendors that you can travel forward with. Testimonials. So there is, sorry, I just lost my screen. There's a whole lot of testimonials, or there's testimonials available on that page from customers, and we'll continue to build that as we build out customers who we become aware of that are implementing this and who want to share their stories and become involved within the PSIA. Next one. So now really the big thing is how do I, and when I say I, how does my vendor, how do I as a vendor, how does my customer, how is I as a customer achieve PLAI compliance or have a PLAI architecture within my organization? So first thing would be become a member of the PSIA and become involved. There is now one of the most important tools we've built is an implementation guide. We've taken the experiences that have occurred with our vendor companies, having done PLAI compliance within their systems, and really fleshed out exactly where the pain points were, what they needed to know, what would have been great to know at the start, all that kind of stuff. And that is now built into that implementation guide, and it's a really start-to-finish guide to how to actually put all this together, including all of the technical wizardry that the specification and the web services and API. So that's a very valuable guide and will assist greatly in accelerating the PLAI compliance. Obviously then if you're a vendor or someone with a physical security system or a device that you want to have on the system, have PLAI compliance, then you need to have done the engineering off the implementation guide. So make the changes that need to be made to implement the PLAI interface. And then we have a set of test tools that are available to allow you to actually run your PLAI interface against the PLAI agent and actually make sure that all of the web service calls and everything else that you're doing is in compliance with PLAI. We get that information sent to us, and your company details are then posted to the PLAI website, so that all of your customers would then know that you are PLAI compliant and can, anytime they want to have a PLAI architecture put in place, you're available and ready to go for that. I think that's it for that slide. And I think we're back to Mohammed to talk about, I'll just hand over to you, Mohammed, again, really to talk about the location-based and Internet of Things and where we're heading in that wave of the future that you referred to earlier.
Thank you, Darren, for a very good layout of the framework. Next slide, please. So this is a simple architectural diagram of what PLAI is achieving for our customers and where it's going from here. What Darren mentioned was to the left of the picture, you see the enterprise directory talking through LDAP to the PLAI agent, and in return, it's talking to different packs, packs number 1 to packs number N, physical access control systems being the target there. But equally, the RESTful XML standard interface that PSIA has created through the PLAI interface, which is fully baked at this point, is an easy integration interface to a vast array of other systems and other pieces of software that can use normalization of identity, credentials, and location information. So, for example, if the organization is currently working with the hoteling software that's used for allocating and reservation of certain locations or certain cubicles for certain employees during a certain period of time, that interface can easily provide that information to them. If there is an organization that wants to do charge for the copier usage, or they have secure print information, they can easily integrate to this interface. If there's an organization that wants to put the count of how many people is in a certain location into use for energy management, shutting off the lights, shutting off the air conditioning systems, and so forth, this is a readily made available interface. We briefly touched on mobile credentials, also integration between access control systems and garage operators, where typically in a lot of situations that we have seen right now, a person that enters the building have to be put into access control system on one end, and also the garage access on the other end, and be removed at the end of the day. So that interface simplifies that operation significantly and keeps it up to date. We can also talk about the upcoming capabilities that this is providing. Imagine some futuristic buildings are now implementing intelligent lockers for multifamily, where you have a locker system, your stuff that you get through the mail or through FedEx and whatnot are put into lockers, and as you come into the building, because of the identity and credential normalization, you're guided to go to certain lockers and grab your stuff, two systems working harmoniously. And this is just the beginning of the list. The list goes on and on, but you can sort of, it's meant to whet your appetite as to what are all the capabilities that can be had using this standard interface. And PSIA is actively working with a number of these organizations. We're going to have announcements in a short period of time that, you know, people on the right-hand side, not only PACS vendors, but or companies on the right-hand side have joined in and are implementing these interfaces. I can give you a specific, with their permission, a specific implementation. We implemented for a company called Corporate Executive Board, where they chose PLAI, and it has been successfully done, implemented, and they're actively now using and integrating some of the capabilities to the right-hand side for their system. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Alex. Alex, please.
Thanks, Mohammed. We did have a few questions that came into the queue, which I can pass along. The first, which companies are behind the PSIA and PLAI? David, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Yes, Alex. As we pointed out in the slide earlier, we have broad representation, but if you look at some of the major PACS vendors in the industry, Tyco, Linnell, Honeywell, they're all engaged. Other PACS vendors like Stanley Gallagher, Castle. We have companies that are involved in PLAI who are in mobile credentials like HID and Allegion. People who are involved in other parts of the industry like Assa Abloy, Tritium, Right Crowd, and customers like Microsoft, like Mike Vadas had mentioned earlier, are getting involved more to support and advocate for something that will really have a dynamic and profound change for their companies.
Thanks, Dave. Mike, I'm going to pull you in for this one. I am an enterprise customer who is interested in PLAI. What do I need to do to get this into my environment?
Ooh, that's a good question. So you want to investigate what it is and whether or not it'll work for you. I had a lot of my tech folks, as I am not deeply technical and never have been, so I spend a lot of time with my folks going, okay, where does clearly the idea make sense? And so I wanted to figure out how it's going to fit. And so we spent a lot of time looking at it, understanding what it would do and how it would do it. And I think the slides were make it very clear today too. So we found a place where we could then move it forward, and it really comes down to how you envision it. Like from my level, it was more about where I saw that and how it played with our access control systems and where it went. And then you have to find the right partner to do that as well. And so, but understanding and talking to PSIA about it and where it goes, is we've got, as you heard, Mohammed and Darren and Dave all well versed in what's going on, and certainly willing to help an end user figure out how to get going on it.
Thanks, Mike. Third question. What is the PSIA doing about privacy concerns in a system that identifies locations of people? Mohammed, could you take this one?
I certainly can. It's a very good question as well. So there are some pieces of software that by nature require the information about the exact person that's at the location. Example of that is the hoteling software or the copier, where we need to provide that location information for a specific person for the other piece of software to do its function. However, there are use cases which, for example, for energy management, where anonymity could be applied and will be applied when the information is passed, where it identifies a person or a number of people that are at the location without specifically being explicit about the identities of those people.
Thank you, Mohammed. I have another question. It looks to be coming from an integrator. I have a customer who would like me to help them implement PLAI. What needs to be done? We'll pass things over to Darren for this one.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, as an integrator, you're often selecting for your customers, the best of breed or the solutions that you believe are best suited to their environment. So, at a starting point, you'll want to be checking your vendors to see who are PLAI compliant and know that, in your back pocket, so that if those questions come up, you know which of your vendors are PLAI compliant. But obviously, if a customer already has a very large physical security environment in place and it's, not really viable to rip it out and replace it with something else, then you want to be assisting them with helping push the vendor towards PLAI compliance. And that's, it's not an insurmountable thing at all. It's quite achievable following the standards-based approach. So that would really be the key thing as an integrator, would be working with your vendors to make sure they're up and running and available with PLAI for the customer.
Thank you, Darren. Our fifth question, how is the Internet of Things addressed in the PSIA? Mohammed, could you address that?
I certainly will try. So when we were building the PLAI interface, we had an eye toward the IoT and what the IoT would mean for such an interface. And there are two themes that came about in designing the system to be IoT compatible. One was that it was supposed to be, it should be web-based, because the information needs to flow to web, i.e. cloud, to integrate with other IoT providers in a very secure way, I add. And so security and ability to connect to internet and provide the information to the internet was prime. The second parameter that we focused on was the uniqueness of the information. When you're doing IoT, when you have a lot of doors and a lot of locations and a lot of people, you want to make sure that the system identifies those locations, people, doors in a universally unique way, such that we know what to do with the piece of information about, I saw person X at location Y. If you don't have universal uniqueness, then it becomes quite difficult. So as we pass these pieces of information from system to system, these pieces are marked with universally unique IDs. And so we have made the system, in essence, IoT ready.
Thank you, Mohammed. And our sixth and what looks like to be our final question, if I only have one physical access control system, what is the value of PLAI? Darren?
Thanks. So, I mean, really, that's a question that has come up before, and it's something we get asked quite a bit. It's really important to realize that while, part of the PLAI specification is the ability to bring credentials across multiple physical access control systems, that's not the be-all and end-all of the PLAI specification. As we pointed out, having a source of truth within your logical security system and having that flow through into your physical security environment, albeit that there may only be one of them, is still a very valuable tool. And that's something that, certain vendors and whatever else have done solutions around, but this is following a PLAI standard way of doing it so that it's sustainable going forward. So you can plug and play, if you move away from Active Directory to Novell Directory or whatever, as long as it's within the compliance of LDAP that's required, it will just flow through and continue working. And that saves you a lot of money in the future if those sort of events do occur. And equally, just what Mohammed was talking about, the ability to take the information that's flowing through the PLAI architecture and push it out to the Internet of Things, to other devices, mobile credentials, whatever, is also a very valuable tool. And certainly as the world, rapidly moves towards those type of technologies and solutions, it's going to be very important that your organization has that capability and can do that within a standards-based approach.
Thanks, Darren. And with that, I'll turn things back over to Dave for conclusion.
Great, thanks, Alex. And Alex, if you'd go to the next slide. One of the things that I wanted to thank everybody for was their time today. We have a lot of integrators who've joined the call today or the webinar, and one of the things that I think is important for you is to recognize that there's a lot of opportunities to engage your customers in discussions related to some of these services, and we think PLAI is a good starting point to do that. And if we look at some of the things that you can do, one of the important things is get involved and join the PSIA. We have opportunities for companies who are vendors to be either associates or users where you have different levels of engagement. The associates actually are involved in setting the standards and influencing the standards. The users are are people who want to have compliant devices but may not be as interested in being involved in setting the standards and working on that. The supporting members is a class that we've just created recently for integrators, consultants, and that's an opportunity for you to get early information on the specifications, standards, to get more connection to some of the people within the PSIA, whether they be companies that are implementing the specs, and understand how they can help support your business. And I'm going to be providing more information to all the participants and all the people registered for the webinar on that in a follow-up email. Also, advocate PLAI. As you understand what we're doing, we think it's important that the integrators and consultants advocate PLAI to their PACS vendors, the vendors that they use. Make sure that it's implemented and fully implemented into the system so that you can rely on them to be able to get PLAI into customer implementations. Also, talking to customers. A lot of customers aren't aware that this capability now exists, and maybe they had a system that did something similar but was all customized. And now with a standards-based solution, it may open some more opportunities for other services that not only you can promote, but they can implement. And also industry groups. Any opportunities for us to connect with groups like as ASIS at local meetings or other security organizations, we're more than happy to support that. We will also be at ASIS in Anaheim. We are planning to have a panel discussion that will go into more detail on some of the capabilities of PLAI. We're looking at September 30th in the morning, and also we'll have more information going out on that in a subsequent email. Next slide. And our site has got a lot of information. We've just supplemented it, as Darren had mentioned earlier, with a lot more information, FAQs on PLAI and other details and resources that you can use. The webinar is recorded. We're going to be posting that to the site for anybody who you know might have interest in your organization or customer, and they can access it there. The FAQs are on the site. And as I mentioned earlier, we are always open to speaking at different security events. So if you're part of an organization that you think might find relevance in this discussion, we'd be happy to discuss the opportunity to speak. And that's my contact information. Please feel free to contact me if you have further questions. And once again, I would like to thank everybody for participating and look forward to seeing you in Anaheim or communicating to you. Thank you.